Hello, welcome to the Go Higher Frequency Astrology channel. My name is Suzanne. Join me as I investigate how the monthly cycles are progressing with a focus on how we can navigate this time more productively. Today, I'm going to talk about the full moon eclipse in Pisces happening on September the 7th, 2025. So did any of you start to feel a quickening of energy around this new moon in Virgo? If you have personal planets in the early degrees of any sign, specifically mutable signs, but any sign, you probably felt this energy more intensely. I know that I did. I have my moon in early Pisces, and I was completely laid out again with cluster migraines. Now, I know when the energy that is happening externally starts to manifest in my body, that there's something going on subconsciously that I'm not aware of that I need to address. And lately it's been me getting caught up in the narrative and the fear that's being published each and every day by this administration's actions and, executive declarations. And all of the things that are happening that make me worry for our country's future, I have been completely consumed by it. And I keep pulling myself out and reminding myself that I have to maintain my health, most importantly, and not get pulled in to the drama that's happening. But it's very, very hard. And so this is my practice. And this was my warning that I need to create new habits that help maintain my mental and physical health. That's what I would recommend for anybody else who is feeling these energies physically, that you need to create better habits that'll prepare you for the year ahead. And so that's my challenge. And I hope that if it's your challenge, you'll offer any suggestions that you have below this video with how you're managing it. But one of the ways that I have to deal with this once it gets to be migraine territory is completely disconnect. So as I mentioned in my new moon video, this was the gateway for this eclipse. It was this preemptive strike warning us collectively to wake up. Now, some of us have already been hearing these stirrings and are already quite awake, but this was a collective warning. And as we all know in the United States, leading up to this new moon, Trump rolled out the red carpet for Putin, which was quite a shock for many of us, even though we knew that he was quite chummy with Putin, to actually roll out the red carpet when our allies are in distress and to basically give away all of what we could have used as leverage for Putin to end this war and to basically start the negotiations by giving him everything that he wanted. Now, after this meeting, a lot of the EU leaders came to Washington, D.C. in force, supporting Zelensky. And, they did this for their own reasons because this war is putting the rest of the EU in peril. And so they need the support of the United States. And of course, Trump knows that. And he's using it as leverage, which is quite sad for a lot of us to see. We don't think that this is a way a leader should operate, but that's what's happening. Now, that was a preemptive strike warning, I think, to a lot of people, but also this escalation that's happening in the United States with the military being sent to Washington, D.C., and then right before this new moon, John Bolton's FBI raid and this release of Ghislaine Maxwell's interview. These were all kind of warnings to us that things are escalating, that if we just keep quiet and keep acquiescing, that things are just going to unravel even more. But people are mobilizing in ways that they haven't before. Now, if you watched my new moon video, you know that this full moon eclipse is activating the Pluto-Uranus conjunction that happened during the 1960s. The conjunction that launched Generation X. I just filmed a video about Gen X on the Lawless Astrology channel. If you want to check that out, I'll link it below. Now, one of the themes of this Uranus and Pluto conjunction is about confronting the idea that productivity is a salvation for oppression. And it has to do with this American dream that we have been sold all of our lives. We are led to believe that if we can be more productive as a society, we can be more successful as a whole. If we can educate everyone, and if they work hard, people will naturally rise up from their stations, and therefore oppression will naturally decrease. But over the last few decades, it has become increasingly more and more difficult for this dream to manifest into reality, especially for the minorities in our society. And lately, we have started to question whether this idea of productivity and material success actually relates to our overall health and happiness as a nation. Productivity as a means to an end without considering the purpose or the spirit of an individual is meaningless at the end of the day. And creating addictive mechanisms to keep people in a consumerist loop is actually creating a very unhealthy society. So we're starting to question all of these things, and that isn't very good for this capitalistic structure, of course. And now with Pluto-Uranus trine that we're starting to experience, we are being forced to reckon with the late stage unraveling and dismantling of our current capitalistic structure, which has been the centerpiece for this American dream tale. Now, a great documentary to check out about this topic is Capital in the 21st Century by Thomas Piketty. He wrote a book that was of the same name, and it was published in 2014. I just watched this documentary this weekend, and it really coalesced all of the things that I had been thinking about and I had been simmering on the past few years as I've been going through my own midlife crisis. And the timing is so interesting of when this book was published, because this was the year that our president went on the Howard Stern show to announce his desire to run for president. Now, I consider him a magician. That's what Geminis are very skilled at. This magicianship. He spoke his desire into existence. A lot of people talk about the power of the word, and it can be extremely powerful for some, and especially for him who has the chart that he does. He latched on to this idea that if we could just bring back manufacturing to the United States, we could bring back to life this American dream. But this theory of productivity that fueled our success after World War II, it definitely fueled our success, worked when our monetary system was tied to producing something material. And that world is slowly disintegrating. If you understand the cycles of Jupiter and Saturn, we just left an Earth cycle of 200 years and we're entering an air cycle. So we're definitely ending this materialistic cycle, this cycle where we just produced all of this materialism. We overproduced it, basically. We became addicted to all of the knickknacks that would fuel the American dream. If we had enough stuff, we would feel more successful. It started to break down with the Pluto-Uranus conjunction in Virgo. Shortly after this conjunction, we experienced in the United States the Nixon shock, which reverberated out into the rest of the world because the rest of the world is relying on our dollar as a place of stability. Now, this is when gold and the dollar were decoupled. Gold used to be the underpinnings that basically ensured that the dollar was solvent and safe. It was a one-to-one relationship. And during that Nixon shock, it was decoupled. So this was the beginning of this dismantling, but it has taken a long time for us to get to the place where it is easily dismantling with the Pluto-Uranus trine. And it has coincided with the rise of tech. Most tech companies do not produce anything tangible as well. And then there's been the rise of the multinational corporations, the creation of tax shelters and cryptocurrencies. And the world's resources are increasingly hoarded by a few in this closed loop of increasing growth at the expense of everyone else. The powers that be are now trying to delude everyone into thinking that AI and crypto and deregulations and tariffs and isolationisms are the new productivity saviors. But in fact, they have and will continue to increase the income and power inequality in the world. And this will further lead into unrest. They're trying to divert our attention from this truth by pointing our attention to scapegoats. In the past, we've only leveled the playing field with mass casualty events like world wars or the Great Depression. So they're basically stirring up the unrest that will lead us into this inevitable outcome. If that is the conscious goal, it's quite alarming, to be honest. If it's not their conscious goal, it is what's leading us into this inevitable outcome. So the question on everybody's minds during this eclipse should be whether we can avoid this reality when all seems to be pointing us in this direction. Can we collectively come up with a better solution? Or will the powers that be keep pushing us in this direction? There's not so much that an individual can do, but when we unite as a collective, we can make a difference. We can point to other solutions. We definitely need the people in power that have the money to help us, but collectively we can push this direction, and it's not too late. The eclipse, of course, is bringing awareness to these issues. It signals a potential climactic event that will push us further into a confrontation with these issues of inequality and how we deal with this as a collective. This climactic event is most likely kicked off by Uranus, stationing retrograde the day before this full moon on September 6th. We are likely to experience something fated, unexpected, which brings us into this full moon. North node eclipses are about future growth. Fated events usually happen during a North Node eclipse that will push us out of our comfort zone and into our future. Whatever happens during this full moon has a chance to mutate us collectively for better or for worse. But I think we are all going to unite collectively for the better. It happens on the human design cross of Dominion. Now, this cross is really describing what I just spoke about. It's about an idea or a pitch that's been sold by the tribal leaders to their followers that everyone has the chance to rise up to become a leader. And it has happened in the past that the way to rise up is if we all gained the right kind of intellectual capital. The goal is to share each other's intellectual ideas of how to move forward as a collective, as one single group. So there have been attempts to control the narrative, and this has not started with our president. It started way before our president, but he's shining a light very intensely on this capacity to manipulate people into the leadership's ways of thinking about the world, even down to the shared agreement about the big lie, this big lie of this American dream that has taken us so long to really confront in any real way. it's been breaking down all of this time. There has been moments of protest. There's been moments of unrest where we've confronted this, but we're confronting this in a much bigger way at this moment. So now maybe we can't strive for the same consciousness they're realizing, but maybe we can connect if we share the same values. And this full moon eclipse is basically a chance for us to recognize how we've all been manipulated by identity politics. And identity politics have been about values, but they've been mixed in with a lot of scapegoating. There's been real fears that have been stoked, but when you dig down into the truth of most people, I don't think it extends to this type of values that we think it extends to, really getting down to the core simplistic values of people and where we can find actual common ground that unites us instead of going off on these tangents of ideas that stoke fear. I think all of us really need to come to terms with the ways we've been divided. Now, I've kind of been preaching this for a little while, and I'm going to continue to preach it because I have my own ways that I've cut off from my own roots because of this. And I'm trying to find my way back to finding common ground. Now, I'm far away from this right now, but I am examining this in myself, and I invite you to examine this in yourself, because without the collective, there's very little that we can do individually. We can make a difference if we could figure out ways to come back as a united force. We can most certainly create a different alternative to the one that's being stoked and sold to us now, despite any politics. Leave out Democrats and Republicans, because at the end of the day, I don't think either serves the collective very well at this moment. So how can we figure out ways to get down to the core, Virgo, the core of our values, to say, what are the simplest things that I value in my life, and find common ground with the other? Raven Caldera calls this the healer's moon. It's Pisces, after all. On the healer's moon, we find ways to bring healing to others. We might listen to a friend who needs to dump some anguish, or we might comfort someone in need. We could answer a hotline, or make someone medicinal herb tea, or give someone a massage who desperately needs it. The healing work can be physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. A group that prays for others or sends out healing energy would find this full moon a good time to work. If nothing else, if you want to do something and have no skills or inclination at all in this area, you can fund and support those who do. Healers often need a little extra attention themselves to keep going, even if that's only a restaurant coupon mailed to their house. Like all Pisces moons, people born under a healer's moon are greatly moved by the suffering of others. The difference is the way that they react to it. Other Pisces moon phases might protect themselves from the terrible pull by hiding, or give of themselves until they are hardly there at all anymore. Healer's moon people are actually fairly well equipped to find reasonable balance in how and when they give of themselves, and tend to be more skillful at and drawn to giving their services and attention to large groups of people rather than just helping out friends or family members. So this is a great full moon to figure out ways that you can give other people healing, and that we can provide a healing presence in the world at large. So let's take a look at this chart a little closer. You can see that this chart, located in Washington, D.C., pretty closely resembles the Sibley chart. This full moon eclipse squares the ascendant-descendant, which clearly demonstrates our crossroads between a so-called free market liberal democracy and an old-school authoritarian tribal leadership. Most of the planets are on the right-hand side of this chart, moving toward the south node, which makes that energy even stronger than it normally is. In human design, the south node is located in a mental gate, the gate symbolizing oppression. The degree is about ambition. It's about overcoming personal oppression in order to achieve security. The focus is on activity and the pursuit of money making to achieve happiness. But it's about the hoarding of money. It's not the spending of money. It's like this idea that the more money I can accumulate, the more power I get to yield. Therefore, the less oppressed I feel. But this energy can also come with indecisiveness. It brings with it serious business miscalculations. There is an indecisiveness as to whether to apply intelligence to recovery from oppression or to accept the weight of it and to take advantage of other prevailing conditions that may be temporary. I think this is why we're not seeing more leaders rise up during this time. But will they be caught off guard by this eclipse? Even though the south node is stronger, the north node is where we are headed during this full moon. The north node is in gate 22, located off the emotional center, and it's about social openness or not. The degree describes an ability to successfully delude oneself and others with more style than actual substance. Think about things like AI and crypto. We have been deluded by a veneer of something much shinier than how it actually functions beneath the surface. And this administration is tap dancing with constant theatrics, putting out one executive order after another, as if these orders were law. But do these orders actually have substance? Not only that, but do these orders have any strategic cohesion? And will they actually contribute to a healthy, functioning country that isn't in constant chaos and disorder? We've already spoken about the full moon being on the cross of dominion. That theme is very consistent with our crossroads between a free market liberal democracy and an authoritarian regime. The full moon sits in the third house, ninth house axis of this chart. It's about our beliefs versus our actions. It's definitely about hypocrisy. Do as I say, not as I do. It's about our laws versus the implementation of those laws. It's about our allies overseas and our neighboring states at home. It's about trade, transit, and communication. Mercury is in tight aspect with this eclipse on the south node side. It's in Virgo, in the human design gate 40, hanging off of the ego, and it's about deliverance in aloneness. It's on a degree describing rigidity. It basically describes the tendency to become very rigid in the purgation of negative forces. There is a need to claim absolute victory. The thought process is, if we can purge all of the negative forces and keep accumulating more power and wealth, we can finally feel secure. Mars is one of the few planets that is headed toward the north node, and it's separating from a square to Jupiter. In early mythology, Jupiter was closely connected with the war god Mars. But rather than taking an active part in battles, Jupiter was thought to oversee and control them. Jupiter is in the 8th house of this chart, so its focus is on the financial relationships with other countries. It's in Cancer, in gate 53, hanging off of the root center. It's in the gate of cyclical beginnings. Think of the fertility of Cancer, and it's in a line that describes an over-assertiveness that, rather than applied to maintaining support in the face of opposition and isolation, may actually strengthen the opposing forces by its attitude. Mars, on the other hand, is in the 10th house in Libra in gate 57, which is about splenic intuition. It's here hanging off of the splenic center. In this degree, there's a tendency toward anger and frustration when clarity points to a problem one is unable to solve. This anger can inspire ultimately futile actions. This Mars is very near the president's own Jupiter degree in Libra, and we can already see his frustration at not being able to negotiate a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. It would seem to some people that he is more interested in creating an alliance with Russia than protecting Ukraine, but he is unable to navigate this alliance without a peace deal first. Jupiter is in a trine relationship to the North Node, so very much in harmony with this style over substance. There is an eagerness to assert oneself in a new direction, despite the fact that this direction has no real substance and may just be an illusion. Venus is also in the 8th house with Jupiter. It's in the human design gate 7, hanging off of the identity center. This gate is about the role of the self and determining what patterns will lead us into the future. And it's at the degree that describes anarchy. There is a rejection of any institutionalized order and the constant need for change no matter what the prevailing conditions. This symbolism brings to mind a few things. One, recently, FEMA has sent out an alarm that we may face a Katrina-like event with similar consequences in emergency response because of recent budget cuts. We have also weakened many of our other important institutions, like the NIH, which will affect our ability to respond to any new pandemics. And the recent cuts to our intelligence communities puts us at risk for cyber attacks and other types of attacks to our energy grid and infrastructure. And number two, the attempt to institutionalize stablecoins as an extension of the dollar to further cement the United States dollar as a global currency. One of the main reasons that so many people have been drawn to crypto is the idea that there's no central controlling entity. There is this idea you are liberated from governmental control with crypto. Not only is this a false assumption, but introducing crypto into the US market with such loose regulations holds significant risks to the entire monetary system. Now, if you take into consideration all of the above and the outer planets connecting the 2nd, 3rd, and 6th houses, this does indicate we may face unexpected disruptions involving key governmental agencies because of prior budgetary cuts. And what we can do is simply be prepared as much as we possibly can without living in a constant state of fear. All we know for sure is that we cannot rely on the government to function in the ways that we are used to it functioning. We have to prepare ourselves to adapt accordingly. The good news is that whatever unexpected news or event that comes out during this time is something that should unite us rather than divide us. Now, just a reminder that Pluto starts to go out of bounds to the south at the beginning of September. And Rosie Finn has a theory that when Pluto goes out of bounds to the south is when more people start to unite against abuses of power in the government. So I'm going to be watching during this full moon eclipse. I hope more people stand up against the abuses of power that's going on right now, but I hope it's nonviolent. Okay, so I'll be back in a week or so to analyze the new moon eclipse that happens on September the 21st. This is the day before Rosh Hashanah and the Libra ingress. So it should bring in some welcome new energies. And I hope it's more hopeful than what we've seen since the beginning of this year. Okay, take care. Bye.